I've had some success recently 3D printing enclosures for electronic equipment, and I'm looking for another project. This is an old variable temperature soldering station that I think went on the market back in the 80s, and I may well have owned this since the early days of the business, or before 1986 or in that sort of time frame. The casing of it has deteriorated a lot, and I've got it stripped out at the moment. It's got has a transformer in it that's quite heavy. It's a 240 volt transformer with a 24 volt AC output, and the controller board for it it all still works. The controller board controls using the AC frequency to switch the power on and off and generate a sort of clock, if you like, it's got LM324 quad op amp on it, and a little triac switcher and a triac with the three main semiconductors on there. It still works. I was thinking about using the soldering iron handle for one of my battery projects, but after trying to reverse engineer the circuit board here, I decided the handle really wasn't going to work. That's the circuit board. It's got a little trim pot potentiometer for adjusting the temperature. It goes in that hole there. It's got a main switch which is illuminated, which comes in here, and it's got a little LED which goes bright while it's heating and goes off while it's not heating. It's got a fuse that slips in the back, and a 5-pin DIN type connector where the iron plugs in. The iron's got a heating element and a thermistor or a thermocouple type heat sensor. It's got a little solder gun holder that's the clip for it there. So I've had all that apart because back in the day this casing got all brittle, and the weight of the transformer sitting here, it's probably dropped at some stage, and it cracked and broke this case into many pieces. I've got it sort of super glued back together and taped roughly in position. There's pieces broken out. Some of these broke out while I was finally dismantling it. It was that brittle. That's where the handle plugs in, and around the back the mains cord goes through here, and the fuse sits here. There's another little hole there which I don't know what's for. And so internally it's got these standoffs here that hold the transformer, and then the circuit board sits on these standoffs, a couple of standoffs at the front here are for screws that come through and bolt into the bottom of the lid. The lid's only normally secured by those front, and it clips in at the rear, and the clips at the rear are broken away. So this base is in a sorry state. I was reluctant to throw this away. It has a certain amount of sentimental value, and it still works quite well. So as an exercise in getting more familiar with fusion, I've started, or in fact I've finished a design of a new base which just fits on the print bed, as you can see here. It's got the same lay out as close as I can of the transformer base and the standoffs for the circuit board and the screws that hold the front down. These square protrusions here are for the end of that solder handle mounting bracket. It can go on the left or the right hand side. So that's my design. It's close to the original. It's made so that that top should fit on it. It's got a little groove around the perimeter where the case should fit on and locate, although a lot of parts of the lid are actually broken as well. It's got a cable strain relief clamp on the back here, and the cable zigzags through those 3 posts before going in underneath the transformer and picking up the connection from the fuse. So it's going to be interesting how well that prints. I've started the print. It's only on its first layer. I'm doing it in PETG, and it's the first time I've used PETG. So I've got the bed temperature set at 75 degrees rather than 60 that I'd normally have for a PLA, and I've got the nozzle temperature set to 240. They're both specifications off the roll box. This new roll of PETG that I've just taken out. I've got little idea as to the properties of PETG compared to PLA. I'm using the same, I think I've got a 6 strand wall thickness and a 50% infill for this design, so it's going to take a hell of a long time to print. Literally only 15 minutes into it at the moment, and the control board saying it's going to finish in an hour, or I think we're going to multiply that by at least 10, if not 20. We'll see. Hopefully the whole file is loaded there. Anyway, it's off to a start. I'm going to leave it overnight, just tripping away like this, and see how it runs. I'm hopefully picked up all of the features in this base design. It's as close a copy, where I think there's some non-critical dimensions. I've increased the size of some of those standoffs, and I've got a shell thickness of 4mm, whereas the original was only around 2mm. So it'll be quite a lump of plastic once it's finished, if it prints completely. So we'll see how that works out. After over 10 hours, the base has now been printed to a thickness of about 8mm. I've been able to judge from the formation of this boss on the end here and a little keyway starting to form that it's at about this stage in the print, and that says it's layer 54. It's somewhere between 50 and 54. The way I can tell that is by printing forward different layers or going back the different layers. You can see up this end there's a straight line across the end there, and that's at 53, and then if I jump to 54 it's still there, and jump to 55 it's starting to open up a little keyway at that end. So we're somewhere in that vicinity. We've certainly got evidence of this keyway starting at this end. And So the screen says 10 hours and 15 remaining. It's hard to know what's right, but it's still chuffing away nicely after 10 hours. I'm not concerned about the fine stringing inside. So we're in the final throes of printing this. "21 hours later, 6 minutes to go, according to that. You can see it's putting a groove around the top rim as it builds it up. Bridged across the top of that jack on the front. And it's just going round and round pretty much. I suspect that was the start of a new layer, perhaps then. Possibly in the throes of the last 5 or 6 layers at the moment. I'll come back when it's done. There it is in all its glory, finished, and total time now. I've turned it off so you can't see. My carriage heads to the top and crashes in to the top of the spool each time, so that's a bit of a bug. It's got something to do with the bracket I've made for the top support there of the vertical screw shaft. Anyway, I'm now waiting for the bed to cool before I try and remove that. This does show the bed temperature is still 62 degrees, so it'll take a little while before that gets back to room temperature. Nozzle's cooled to 45, 44, and look, the edge of this box looks pretty clean. Obviously I've got a lot of stringing. The last string dragged out right up to the top there. It's still attached, obviously. Yeah, and internally, I think everything's there, so when it comes to fit up, I'll know more. You might have just seen the red light come on. There it was again there. That's the little LED on the power switch, and this is the temperature control. If I turn that up, the red light's staying on longer because it's heating the iron. The iron's mounted in its support bracket, which fits down in that square hole. There's one on each side. You can have it on left and right. That's the transformer mounted up and the circuit board mounted in there. The DIN connector in the front and the fuse connector in the rear there. Power cord goes in, it goes through that strain relief. All these things I've printed into that replica base, and everything has worked pretty well. Just had to cut out a whole lot of stringing strands and do a little bit of a clean up with a scalpel, but that base is quite serviceable and quite rigid, and is going to see this soldering station run for a few more years. The actual soldering handle is tips and things are still available for that. I think they call them 9 series tips. I think it's a very similar tip to what's in my later 888 model. This is a 928 from 1980s, but yeah, the numbers on there have rubbed out. It's been an iron that I've used for years. When it got dropped and broke the case, I was telling you how brittle the case had got. Well, while I've been fooling around here, the upper case just shattered and all the pieces are on the table there. I'm not sure whether I'm going to try and print a new top or just stick and tape all that together. Now that it's got a rigid base, it's not so important that the cover is not just a jigsaw of pieces, because you know, the problem with a broken base is the transformer was flopping around and there's the potential of short outs and things inside it. So anyway, that's been a successful print, successful operation of design in Fusion. Jury's out as to whether I make a lot of effort with the old cover. Well, I've decided I'm going to make a new top. Stay tuned for part 2. Get out to your shed and have some fun.